Hello everybody, this is the Grade 11 Theory Unit 6B, and today's topic is diatonic 4-note jazz chords. This is the final theory lesson for Grade 11. So I've got some examples here on the board that are in your guide, and we'll get to those in a little bit, but I'll just read through the guide material like we've been doing for the past couple of videos. So here we go. So the 4-note jazz chords. The main classifications of all jazz chords are either major, minor, dominant, diminished, or augmented. And then the chords are constructed of two parts, so a triad being either major, minor, augmented, or diminished. And then there's one other chord tone that's usually, but not always, a seventh of some type. So you can see on the board the first three examples, we have a seventh added to a basic triad of some kind. And then we're going to be below doing another example of a chord that doesn't actually just share or have sevenths, but has other notes as well. So we'll go through these. We'll start with the major ones. So major chord examples. So major chords, we have the major sixth and the major ninth, and it's usually notated as the MAJ 6/9. The 6/9, that's not in reference to any kind of like for dominant sevenths and voicing those things, the pattern there. It's basically just telling you that it's a major triad that also includes the sixth and the ninth note. And you can see in your example that's what we've got. It's two extra chord notes added to a C major triad in this example. So the sixth note of C is A. The ninth, remember from compound intervals in our last lesson, is just simply a major second but an octave higher in the chord added to that chord. So instead of having a D between the C and the D, we put the D an octave higher. This helps to spread out the notes of the chord here. It makes it a little bit easier to hear all of the different sounds of the chord that's taking place. So if we had it just, a C with a D right above it and then an E on top of it, be very dissonant, be very difficult to discern all of the individual pitches. So by spreading things out over an octave with a 6/9 chord, you get to hear all of the relationships a little bit more clearly. The other example we have is a C major 7 chord. We're familiar with this one when we did all of our seventh chords going up the scale. And we know the major seventh, just basically, again, C major triad, just adding the major seventh. It's a B natural, it's the seventh note of C major. So there's a major seventh, notated as MAJ 7. And then the last example of major is the augmented major seventh. And so this is a major seventh written above a C augmented triad. And you can see that it's occasionally notated in two different ways. So the first being major 7 and then sharp 5. In brackets, or it's sometimes notated as C augmented and then major 7. It's important to remember that even though we've got two different designations for the chords, they're both basically indicating the same information there. So on occasion, we're going to see some of these chords, they actually do have two different names. Both are in practice. It's common practice to see both. It depends on perhaps the music you're using, and time periods or instrumentation, that kind of thing. Different publishers, different composers might notate it differently, but it does mean the same thing there. Okay, so those are all the major jazz chord, diatonic jazz chord examples. The next being, we'll go through our minors. So we'll use C minor as this example. So the first one being C minor 6, and just like the 6/9 chord, it's designated as a C minor triad, and then it contains the major sixth above. Now this is important to note. It's not, even though it's designated C minor 6, the minor is, or the negative sign you see after the letter, that's only in reference to the actual triad. So the 6, or the number designation that follows, in this case, is actually a major 6 above the root. So there's an A natural in this chord rather than an A flat, even though we might assume, oh, C minor, it's an A flat in there. Okay, so it is a major 6 above there. If we look at the next example, the minor 7th, and so this one, C2, a C minor triad, and then the 7th in this case is referencing and actually a minor 7th for C minor. So this one has a B flat in its mix rather than a B natural, which would be the next example. So this example of a minor triad, we have two pieces of information. So we have a C minor triad, C, E flat, G, and then we have a major 7th on top. So this one's referred to as a C minor major 7. And so you can see it's notated how the difference in notation between the minor 7th and the major 7th, those two examples, C minor 7 and C minor major 7, you do need to have the MAJ 7. And the MAJ 7 is always in reference, or a major written in front of a number is always referencing that specific number. Okay, so not written with a symbol like a minor or a negative or a positive. The next example, the minor 7 flat 5. This is sometimes called the half diminished chord. So it actually does, again, there are two names that follow with this one, so I made an annotation in your guide there. But the C minor 7, and then in brackets, flat 5. So it's a C minor triad C minor triad with a seventh, a minor seventh, but then the brackets tell us to take the fifth note and lower that by a semitone. So there's actually a G flat in this one, unlike just a regular minor 7. The other way of notating this one is a C with a diminished sign with a slash through it, and that's to reference the half diminished aspect of the triad. Okay, so there's our minor examples, and we'll do, as I say, we'll go through these, and we'll do a few examples on the board. It's always good to start looking at how these things work and working your way through them. It starts to get a little bit more clear when we're discussing these. So dominant, we'll do dominant ones next. There's basically just two examples for dominant chord examples. We know this because, well, dominant implies major tonality. There's a major third in that triad. So there's only, there's only two types of chords that have major third, major, augmented. But then, so that, again, in extending that to the dominant aspect. So we have the dominant seventh, which is written as C7. And so the C, again, the letter designates if it's a major or a minor triad as its root, and then the 7 is the extra piece of information that says add the dominant seventh to C major. So add the seventh note, but it's always a minor seventh. In both cases, the dominant is always in reference to a minor seventh above whatever type of chord or triad is originally notated. In the next example, C augmented 7 does not mean C augmented triad augmented seventh on top, so having a B sharp. It's still a dominant seventh or a minor seventh, so it's a C augmented triad, C, E, G sharp, raise the fifth, major third, but then we're going to have a minor seventh above the root. Okay, so dominant triads will always have a minor seventh above the root. Next, we're going to look at these symmetrical chords. So just like we did before when we were looking at triads and we were talking about the thirds, diminished and augmented chords are both equal divisions of the octave, so diminished in minor thirds and augmented in major thirds. Both chords, as we have seen, are also found in tonal chord patterns. So due to this, you're going to find various notational differences in naming these chords when reading music books. So the diminished chords are stacked minor thirds, and we know this extension from our diminished triad, minor root, to a third as a minor third, then a third to the fifth as a minor third, and now it's going to be a third to the seventh is also going to be a minor third. So by respelling the fourth note in a diminished chord, this is often something that is done as a standard practice, and these chords are often written with the octave included to help, again, to clarify and reinforce the tonic sound of the chord itself, so what the root notes are. So for this guide, we're going to use the following notational distinction. So C with a diminished just simply means C diminished. A C diminished sixth, that's again a C diminished triad, and add a major sixth above. Remember, when there's a sixth, it's always a major sixth above whatever basic triad it is. And that sixth and this is always, again, in reference to the roots to the sixth note of the scale itself. It's always major sixth regardless of the key that you're in. And then we've also got C diminished seventh, and that's when we spell it with an actual diminished seventh on top. So octaves can be used and they don't affect the naming at all. So, and then we'll look at augmented. So diminished chords, so augmented chords are stacked major thirds, typo there. These chords are written with the octave note included when used as a four-note chord. So C augmented triad with or without the octave. So you can see some examples here. So diminished and augmented chord examples. So diminished triad, C to E flat to G flat, that's a diminished triad. Put the diminished seventh on top, which is a B double flat, and then add the octave above that. Common practice, it's always helpful to have that included in the chord. So you can see when you compare the diminished seventh to the diminished sixth, and if you look at the sixth and the seventh notes respectively, so C to B double flat, well, we know enharmonically a B double flat sounds the same as an A natural. And so that's the note we have in the diminished sixth example, C to an A natural. So actually, both of these chords written differently sound the same. It's kind of an enharmonic equivalency going on here. And then, of course, we have our augmented triad, which is, again, it's the same as what we've learned before. It's just now with four-note voicing, we're going to add an extra root to that chord an octave higher. So that's all that's happening with the augmented jazz chord. So those are our 5 different types of jazz chords that we're going to look at today. The next section in your guide on page 4 is going through scale patterns using 4-note chords. So just like we did with C major, and we started off with C major, we drew our scale of C major, and then we went back and we created thirds and fifths above every single note of the C major scale, and naturally we created that harmony of minor, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and diminished. And so you can see in this example, it's the exact same thing. It's just we're adding an extra note, the 7th, to each of those chords. So instead of having C, E, G, we're going to go C, E, G, B. And then we're going to identify that chord as C major 7. Then we've got our D minor triad. We've got our minor 7th above the D to a C natural. E minor 7th, same thing, minor triad with a minor 7th on top. F major 7, F major triad with a major 7th on top. And again, the way in which the major 7 and the dominant 7th, the minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, it's all diatonic to C major. All of these notes are found there. So jazz lead sheets do not indicate the diatonicism of chords with Roman numerals. So this is different than what we've been looking at. So we don't designate jazz chords. For example, the subdominant, we don't write it uppercase Roman numeral 4 MAJ7 afterwards. Jazz players, we don't do that. We just simply notate or identify the chords based on the pitch as the root note, and then whatever piece of information comes after it. So chord structure is shown using the root of the individual chord, and then it's up to the performer to analyze the diatonic chord progression, and then the chord symbol is written above the staff for the duration of the chord. So again, it's far more pertinent to jazz players when they're looking to improvise over chord changes to know what the actual chord is itself, just to read what the chord is, rather than being given a key signature and then having to analyze all of the notes. Because again, in common practice with jazz players, a lot of it's reading lead sheets or fake books, and so that simply means there's just the melody, or the head as we call it, and it's just got the chord progressions to go with that, and that's it. So it's up to the soloist and each member to basically understand, okay, here's the melody, we know the key we're giving it, but these are the chords, and basically when it comes to improvising, this is the vocabulary in which would make sense to use based on what the chord information is describing. So you can see both examples. So there's a treble clef example, and then there's a bass clef example. And then the minor chords, exact same scenario, but remember, always in a minor key, raise the 7th, so it's actually C harmonic minor. So that's why the first chord is a C minor major 7 chord. If it wouldn't raise the B flat, it would just be a C minor 7, but it is B natural because, again, it's always a harmonic minor. And then we have D minor 7 flat 5, or D half diminished. E flat major 7 sharp 5, so that's like our E augmented with a major 7th on top. F minor 7, G7, A flat major 7, and B diminished 7th. And then again, you can see it's also notated in the bass clef. And that's pretty much it. So we've got a couple examples here on the board. So we'll go through what these things are asking us to do. And I've taken these from your guide, so you can basically, once we go through these, you've got a couple answers for you. So identifying chords. So we didn't mention this yet, but all chords, when we're notating them jazz chords, we're just keeping things simple. We're going to be notating all of our chords in root position, okay, just for the sake of simplicity. But yes, you can certainly invert chords and have different inversions going on, but for today, we're just going to look at what they are in root position so that we understand what's taking place, relationships with the notes, and how to identify all the different tones. So first step, as always, is a couple ways to approach this. These can be thought of as like interval questions, so what we've been learning for many years now, and that the bottom note will designate basically the key, except now that we're dealing with chords, we could be in a major key or we could be in a minor key. So we're just simply going to start off, and the other thing to note with all chords is that we always use capital letters to notate and to indicate that information. So we'll go through. So our first example, we're in the treble clef. So we have an A flat, we have a C, we have an E flat, and then we have a G natural on top. So I know I have an A flat something. So I'm going to go ahead and put A flat down. And then I'm going to ask myself, okay, well, an A flat to a C natural, is that a major third? Is that a minor third? Because again, we're going to be thinking in terms of our thirds. The answer is it's a major third. So I have A flat with a major third so far. What's an A flat to an E flat? or C to an E flat's a minor third, so my pattern of thirds, I have major third, minor third, so I know I'm dealing with an A flat major triad as the foundation. And then I'm going to look at the distance from the root to the upper voice, or to the seventh in this case. So it's going to be an A flat to a G natural. Well, I know that in the key of A flat major, there is a G natural which occurs in that key. So an A flat to a G, in this example, is a major seventh. So this one's going to be written as A flat, and then we're going to go major 7. Okay, so I erase my major sign. Now that I know what the chord is, I can get rid of that. This still implies that it's a major chord. Okay, if it was an A flat minor major 7, we'd still have to have some information to refer to the basic triad as being minor, and then this would have been in brackets, but we don't have that. So we have an A flat with the 7th note of A flat stacked on top, so A flat major 7. If we look at our next example, still in the treble clef, we've got a D as our bass note, so D, F sharp, A sharp, C. Some of you are getting pretty quick at identifying your triads, so we know we've got major third, so we have a D augmented triad. D, F sharp, major third, D to A sharp, augmented 5th, so a D augmented, and then I'm going to look at the 7th note, so a D to a C. And remember that the 7th is going to be in a minor 7th when it's, well, in this case it is a minor 7th, so D to C sharp would have been a major 7th if we were to assume we're in key of danger, but it's D to a C, so it's just an augmented 7. So this one just simply gets notated as D augmented 7. It does not mean that this is an augmented 7th above a D. It just simply means D augmented triad with a minor 7th on top. Okay. Next example, we're into the bass clef. Whole pile of flats going on in this question. So E flat is our root note. So we have an E flat to G flat, that's a minor third. G flat to B double flat, that's also a minor third. Okay, so we've got E flat diminished in this question, but if we look at the 7th, so an E flat to a D flat, well, E flat major or an E flat to a D flat is actually a minor 7th. So in this case, a dominant 7th. So an E flat to a D flat, E flat diminished 7th. Now, if I were to notate this chord as E flat diminished 7th, I'm actually contradicting a very important piece of information. So E flat diminished with the 7th, unlike other chords, this actually says that there should be a diminished 7th above this E flat. So this actually has to be a D double flat in order for this chord to match what I've described it as being. I don't have a D double flat, I have simply just a D flat. So this chord is going to be notated E flat half diminished as one possibility, because I'm not quite fully diminished. I don't have the diminished 7th. If I have diminished 5th and diminished 7th, yes, fully diminished 7th chord. I don't have that though. So this one's either E flat half diminished, or the other name which I could use to describe this chord, E flat diminished, E flat minor 7 with a flat 5 as the other possible way of notating this chord. So that's simply saying E flat minor. I don't have an E flat minor, again I have the diminished 5th, but don't forget that that's what this is referencing to. So we just ignore that for just a moment. E flat minor 7, E flat, G flat, B flat, D flat to E flat, that's the dominant 7th, so E flat minor triad with a minor 7th on top, but go back, lower the 5th, so you get a G double or B double flat in this case. Okay, so two possible ways. Either one is correct when you're notating those chords. Speaking of notating chord or identifying those chords, but now we're going to notate a couple chords. So B augmented. So again, basic triad. Now we can just look at this and say, oh right, B augmented. It's basically just, again, a B augmented triad. And we don't use key signatures when we write chords, I forgot to mention earlier, but we're just simply going to go ahead and spell them with the notes that we need. So we need a B, and I'll put my B here. We need a D sharp because we need a major third. We need an F double sharp because we need to raise the 5th relative to the key. And then on top of that, good practice, we're going to add in another B on top. Okay, so there's a B augmented triad. Pretty easy for that one. D flat 6-9 chords. So we know we need a D flat. So we need a D flat major triad. So D flat, we need an F, and we need an A flat. So there's our D flat triad. Now we need to add the 6th note and the 9th note. So D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat. So we need a B flat, and we need to add the ninth note, which is an E flat in this case. So there's a D flat 6-9 chord. Okay, D flat major triad. Where you place these other notes, again, some of you may have, an accidentals, MuScore and other programs and things will generally push things over to the left or the right, but notating it this way is fine. You're still containing all the information that's required. And so next, our final example here, we have a B minor 7 flat 5. Now in this case, it's been notated this way. It could have been written this way. Very much, or most of the time, this is the very common way of notating a half diminished chord, is the B minor 7 flat 5. Less frequently will you see it notated that way. Still possible, but the way we have it here is far more common to see. So we need a B minor 7, or we need a B minor triad to start things off. So there's our B to a D, B, D, F. So there's B, well that's actually B diminished, which is really what we need. B minor, so we need a minor third, and we need another minor third. So that's where the flat 5 is coming into play. So B to an F natural is the flat 5. And now we need to add to that the 7th. And remember, it's a minor 7th above the B. So B to an A natural minor 7th. So there's B minor 7 flat 5. That one's fairly straightforward too. So practice writing all of these chords, do all of these examples in your guide, and then submit those ones in. And then afterwards, you've got a couple different scenarios. So you're going to be writing out your diatonic chords for A flat major and G harmonic minor. Very straightforward actually for this one, and labeling them too. It doesn't specify that in your guide, but basically A flat major, draw your clef, draw put your key signature in, draw your A flat major scale, and then just add a third, a fifth, and the 7th to every one of those notes. Don't add any accidentals. And then after that, you're going to label them, and you will have completed that question. And then the next one, G harmonic minor. Get your minor key. Remember, it's a minor with a raised 7th always. And then go through, add your 7th, making sure that it's raised relative to the key signature. And then your final work is just identifying specific chord degrees in the next section. And that's pretty much the exact same question as in grade 9 when we ask you to identify subdominant of B flat major, for example. And you simply remembered, oh, right, that's the 4th note. So E flat, right? So for example, but now we've got minor keys. So C minor, what's the 4th degree of C minor? C, D, E flat, F. So you're going to write F as the answer for that one. So that's just identifying individual chord tones on their own. That's it.